thrilled that you've joined me, Susannah Constantine. And you're going to talk about your incredible new book, Ready for Absolutely Nothing, and about your life and your early life. And I really kind of want to get into that. I don't know whether you like being known as a novelist and a journalist and a broadcaster and a podcaster, or as the person that drives her children around, does the laundry.
I'm both those. I'm more the latter. I've now kind of done full circle, and I am a working mother. I'm a working mother and housewife is what I am, who happens to write a sodding good book at the same time.
You have written a sodding good book. I love this book. It's so honest and raw and powerful, and I can see myself in it. I can see my friends in it. And most importantly, I guess I really connected to you in it. So for this pod, my first question completely relates to your book, is what is the greatest challenge you have faced or are facing
in my life? That's a very good question. Where do I begin? I think it's probably learning to like myself.
Wow.
Is the
so
greatest
that's the
challenge.
Overarching learning to like.
Yeah, it's going from I have no idea who I am. When I was a child, I have no idea. No one else cares who I am. And I don't mean that in a pity, poor me way, because this memoir is not a misery memoir. It's full of joy. It's hilarious. But so having gone from not even questioning who I was, and then going through my alcoholic years being a part, not just, I then became Trini and Susannah. I wasn't Susannah, and Trini wasn't Trini. We was Trini and Susannah. And then losing that and coming out the other side, drinking alcoholically, and then coming out of that and then thinking, who the fucking hell am I? And what this book has really helped on a selfish level is to discover that there are still a lot of questions to be answered. And I think we all have that. And, you know, trying to find out. So, because I don't think you can change anything in your life unless you really know who you are. You can't change other people. You can't change your relationships with other people. If you have bad relationships, if you have good relationships that you want to become better, you've got to change yourself to do that.
Because what I get from what you're saying is, and from the book, is you couldn't know yourself because what was modeled around you didn't see you and know you, because they didn't know themselves.
Exactly.
And so from very early relationships, your primary relationships, your mum, she was, you know, you said in the book, she died before she died.
Yeah.
And that she, you know, she had bipolar and she used alcohol and drug, you know, was it prescription drugs?
Yeah, prescription drugs. Yeah.
To anaesthetize herself. And so they were constantly putting on a show and you could never connect to them. And that meant they never connected to you. So I guess all you've known is how to put on a show, and you know, you are kind of putting on a version of yourself that would please other people.
That's so true. You've put that so succinctly. Oh my God, I so need a therapy session right now. This has come at the right moment.
Okay.
But that's exactly it, Julia. That's exactly it. And I think I've been performing all my life, and I have said that, but I haven't really understood why I said that. And I think, you know, alcohol was part of that, because I was becoming someone that essentially wasn't me. You know, I wasn't someone who was happy being on television and being not scrutinized. I don't think we were ever scrutinized because we loved what we did. But it was a performance. My life has been a performance. And now I don't feel I have to perform anymore. And getting sober has given me freedom.
Getting sober has given you freedom. Because I guess the aspects and the energy we use to hide kind of what we don't know, but I think the not knowing is like the bits that we fear are really disgusting, or that there's something wrong with us that other people will kind of step away from. So we work so hard to put on the shiny versions of ourselves, also for ourselves, because we don't want to know these dark sides of ourselves. And it sounds like paradoxically what you're saying, I can see you shaking your head.
No, it's
Interrupt
so true.
me.
No, it's so true, because what it is that how you feel about yourself, how I was feeling about myself, which was shame, guilt, things I felt all my life, even when I was, before I was drinking alcoholically. And I assumed that everyone else felt the same way about me. So if I hate myself, not hate, that's a very harsh word, but, if I was disappointed with myself, thinking I had to try harder, or I couldn't be lazy, I couldn't do, I had to be doing. I assumed that that's what everyone else thinks too, because you put your own feelings onto those you love the most. And, I put a lot of grief on my husband, Dean, because of this, blaming him, until eventually I realized it was me. And there was huge liberation in finding that out, because that's when the penny dropped, when I thought, okay, if I can change myself, I can make things so much better.
Because when you projected onto him how you felt about yourself, it was this awful circular loop that you were furious with him for what you had projected, and you couldn't receive what he was genuinely giving you.
So
and you
true.
couldn't take it in, so you stayed hungry, and with all of your needs, your need for connection, for love, and for affirmation, like, I'm okay who I am. A definition of being loved is being known as you are, and you never felt known as you are. So I guess, my second question is, what was it about that experience of not knowing yourself that was particularly difficult? And I guess it was I don't want to answer, you tell me.
I think it was being afraid. I think that's what it was, because I was in an alien situation for the person I really was. And I think that bore fear.
And it sounds like you're surprised as you're saying alien situation, like you kind of haven't said it like that before.
No, a lot. I mean, you are just, light bulbs are popping off in my head. Although I've written about all this, you put it in a way, in your way, in Julia's way. And I'm going to be listening back to this podcast over and over again. But it's exactly spot on. You've hit the nail. Totally.
Because with the fear comes so much other horrible shit. You and I both like swearing. Yeah. Because fear means you have to arm yourself against yourself and others, because you fear that you're going to get hurt. But it also means that you look at life as a place of danger, and fundamentally you feel so alone, so profoundly alone.
It's hugely isolating. And it's interesting the way when you mention the word danger, but the one place I've felt comfortable was pushing myself physically and putting myself in physical danger. And
that's
weirdly,
so interesting.
That's when I felt safest. So work that one out, Julia Samuels.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Make sense of it. Okay.
Yeah, make sense of that one.
That makes perfect sense, because your deepest, darkest fear that's also filled with shame is, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable enough. And if I really show myself, I'll be profoundly rejected. But putting yourself out of a comfort zone, which isn't to do with other people's response to you, but is to do with your courage and your bravery, when you step into that zone, like swimming in cold water, going on programs with millions of unknown people watching you, you are pushing yourself and saying to yourself, well, I am strong, I can do this. The trouble with it, so that feeds you for a bit, but the trouble with it, it doesn't go to the heart of you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But it does make some flipping good stories, let's be honest.
And your book has amazing stories and people.
Yeah, and people, and yeah, and it's like, with Strictly was one example, and But as I was doing it, although I knew I was humiliating myself in front of millions of people, at the back of my mind, I was thinking, this is going to be great copy. This is going to be great copy. So kind of calculated. But
also at the beginning, you had this kind of belief that you were going to be really good, which I guess is what. So there's this. That sounds so mean.
No, but it's so. But I did. I remember I got back. So after that, I had never watched the show, so I went on.
Which
to
is
the show.
like, can I just say, for someone who's been kind of broadcasting and all of it, is a bit of a rookie error, just there. But that fits with the whole. Gosh, I'm getting excited at myself, at my Sherlock Holmes self, is that your capacity for denial and not looking at what's going to be difficult played out in every aspect of your life. Anybody, if they said yes to a show, would look at the show and see what they were saying yes to. But this denial played out 360 degrees. So you just didn't even look.
No, I didn't even look. I went in there. I mean, it was a major rookie error. Anyway, I got put with Anton, and thank God, who's remained a dear friend, and I love him deeply. But he said to me after we were kicked out first, he said to me, you know, I can tell if someone can dance as soon as they walk through the door. And as soon as you walked through the door, I knew there was no hope. Okay. So he was acting too. Anyway, so he was so enthusiastic. I mean, God bless him. He was just so nurturing and encouraging and enthusiastic. We spent many hours lunching and eating food and talking. We barely did any rehearsals at all because there was no point. I didn't think that at the time. I thought we were working. It's like, oh, God, I'm exhausted. You know, we've done 3 hours. I then found out that everyone else was doing 14 hours a day. And I was thinking, oh, you know, I really must be quite good. I don't need so many hours. So then
the delusion plays on.
The delusion. Then I went back home. And I remember saying to Steen, my husband, you know what, Steenie, I think I found something that I'm really good at. And he went, really? And I went, yeah. I really do. I found something, you know, ballroom dancing. I can really do it.
This is my shtick.
This is my 2 days later, I come back having told Anton, well, you know, I think we can do a showy end of some kind. I think you need to kind of, you know, throw me across the floor, go back to steam. You know what, Steenie, I think we could win. Okay. Wind the movie forward to the live shows, and all you see is this orange sack of potatoes being lobbed across the ballroom floor, and me coming out like Ava Perron in her death tour with sort of rigor mortis, so 7 years into her death tour. And I mean, what can you do but laugh? But it was excruciating. It was so terrifying, the whole thing. But you know, as with everything in my life, I look at the positives that came out of it. And you know, what I made amazing friends. It was an incredible thing to witness. But yeah, you're so right. It's like, let's just go in, bulldoze in. Don't know, if you find out anything about it, you're going to get more frightened. It's like go in blind. And that's a lot of how I've conducted my life.
And so if that is a micro of the macro, like, don't look, you know, because I'll be too scared. And have also some kind of actually founded in reality too, optimism that it is going to, so that there is, so, you know, you talk about kind of not knowing yourself and hiding yourself, but there are qualities and energies and capacities that you have that have really worked for you, despite being kind of having these things that
having a death wish. Yeah.
What's the death? Tell me about the death wish.
Well, like kind of putting myself in situations like that where I die by 1,000 cuts in front of 13 million people.
And I guess alcoholism is a slow death.
Yeah, of course it is. And it very genuinely is a slow death. As we know, it's a deadly disease. But I can't really compare, well, with my layman brain, I can't compare the two. Because, when you're drinking, you believe that it's helping until it stops. But I didn't think that strictly was gonna help per se, not consciously. But yeah, no, that's very interesting about doing dangerous things to feel better about oneself. I'm strong. That's what it is. I'm going to do that.
And you are
strong.
though. There's
Yeah, no,
truth
I
in
am.
it.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of that comes from having a mum with bipolar disorder, because as children, and all children are the same, we have to learn to cope and we adapt. And that can breed many different things, many negative things, but it can also breed tremendous strength.
Because the strength, I guess, is that you had to learn to manage on your own, because you didn't have a kind of safe place to go back to in the kind of arms of your mum. And I heard the kind of complicated relationship with your mum, which I don't know if it's changed through writing your book, in that there was a bit of you that really was disgusted by her and felt ashamed of her, and then had this excruciating aspect when you kind of saw yourself doing the same things, like lying, drinking, and not wanting to be the same mother. And this idea of kind of what gets passed down, what is genetic, what is behavioral, you kind of wrestled with a bit in the book, didn't you?
Yeah, and then that was something I consciously want. Well, that's one of the reasons I started looking back at my life, was I wanted to know if if I could have avoided becoming an alcoholic. But I don't. I look back at my mum, and I don't. She was incredibly loving, and I wasn't actually. I never showed that I was ashamed of her to other people. People used to come and stay, and I wasn't ashamed of her. It wasn't, I was very open about her illness because no one else was being open about it. My father was in denial. And I guess that's going back to, feel the fear and do it anyway. It was that kind of, I'm going to go full in. It's so interesting, this. Yeah, I'd like, chuck my mother forward metaphorically. Here she is. I'm not going to hide anything. She's here. She has an illness. And it's the same thing as going to, off into the Arctic to do something insane. It's the same as doing Strictly. It's the same as all these things. And that's how I deal with it about myself. I'm so open because maybe it's another form of danger. I don't know.
That would make sense, that the seeds of the choices and decisions and the ways you've thrown yourself into danger were early, when you wanted to be honest. But there's some difficult kind of enmeshment, isn't there, where there's real honesty and then hiding, dishonesty, and lies.
No, but
so the two are kind of in this sort of murky, I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, it's sort of like hiding behind bravado almost. It's by allowing my friends, that sounds terrible, but by my friends, knowing my mother, being aware of her illness, I was somehow hiding behind that. I must have been. It wasn't a truthful honesty. That's absolutely right.
And one of the things that I'm beginning to understand, it's taken me like over 3 decades as a therapist, is that in the end, even just partial lies, but certainly lies, are the things that block us engaging with life and in connection, and that we need connection most. But the truths we don't tell ourselves, the truths we hide from ourselves and then conceal in brilliantly kind of creative ways, are the things that do us harm over time.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's why it seems that so many creative people are, have addiction problems or mental health issues. And it's, the more creative people are, the more it seems from all my very dear friends are very creative, and that we're all in recovery now. We've all gone into recovery.
Thank goodness.
And is it that, yeah, I think that's been well documented about the creative mind and the association with mental health disorders. That's something to think about.
It's something like the depth of the pain is equal to the depth of the creativity to camouflage the pain, something like that.
Yeah.
But what has helped you? So did you know what you were hiding for ages? So I'm asking two questions which are slightly different questions. But maybe start with, when did you begin to recognize your kind of bravado was an armor? And then what helped you begin to slowly take off the armor?
First time I recognized my bravado was an armor was writing this book.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So that was like 2 years ago. You were 58.
I started writing my book. And I think that's why.
Do you know what triggered you to, that's not the right word.
Yeah.
Do you know what the impulse to write the book came from?
It came from questioning my really looking at why I was an alcoholic and could I have avoided it. So it came from that.
So you knew at that point you're an alcoholic and you were
that was 2.5 years ago. So I knew that, and then I went public about being an alcoholic, and there was such an overwhelming response. So I thought, okay, let's look at this a little bit more closely. And then I got contacted. I went public about it, and then I got contacted by various publishers to write my journey to sobriety, which I didn't really want to do because I didn't feel equipped to do that. It's a huge responsibility to write something like that. And then I realized that actually my life had been quite extraordinary, sort of female Forrest Gump, and witnessing all these incredible a lot of social history in there, a lot of historic moments that I witnessed. And then, through writing this book, I've learned about that I have not been true to myself for most of my life, but inadvertently and somehow, thank someone somewhere, the angels, I'm now living the life that I was meant to, which is working, because I get a lot of my self-esteem from working. I have a need of respect from other people, and being a working mother, being at home, being a parent, being a wife, being a cook, doing the washing, doing the driving. That's my natural state, and I love it.
And that's like your mum too.
Yeah, so I've become,
your mum and dad.
My mum couldn't be. Yeah, so I'm past the mercantile classes. I work, I make money.
Like your dad.
And like my dad.
And his business brain. You did unbelievably well with Trini
most
and
of that was Trini, but I got a bit of a business brain. But that's true. I've become what they probably would have been had they had the tools.
But you've pulled from both of them, your mother and your father.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I have. That's another light bulb moment, Jube. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. That's it. And I've fucking cracked it. I do. I think I've cracked it. I think I'm there. I think I'm so much more present. I'm there for my kids. I'm there for my husband. I'm a much better, less sort of passive aggressive wife. And it's not a question of being happier, but it's a question of being more aware. It's a question
more yourself.
Yeah, I'm more myself. And I'm learning, I find it very difficult. I don't know if any of your listeners feel this, but I find it very difficult to be completely myself in front of my children, because I think they'll judge me. And that's that's something I'm literally just thinking about now. And the people I feel most comfortable being absolutely myself with are all my gay best friends.
That is so interesting. So there's something about loving your children so much, being invested in them so much, is also incredibly risky if you want them to love you.
The risk, it's risk. That's the word, isn't it? Yeah.
The risk, and with gay. So let's stick with the children.
Yeah, because
for a moment, and then we'll go to the gay friends.
Yeah, they might abandon me. It's the abandonment. If they know the real me, they're not going to like what they see, and they're going to abandon me.
Like your mother did.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
It's a big thing, yeah. That's a big thing. Yeah. But it's getting better. It's getting better.
I can feel it kind of slightly percolating through your system.
No,
like,
it is. It is. It's kind of like, wow, that's quite a realization. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's when you really kind of nail the truth, it's extremely powerful. And that, you're right, I'm sort of fizzing. It's like I've, taken something wonderful but a bit out of control.
Yeah. The kind of power of seeing something that you've seen for decades and then seeing it in a way that releases you, I guess. And my guess is, and my invitation would be to ask your children.
How do you see me? Or who do you think I am? Isn't that a bit self-indulgent?
No.
No. Don't they just say, oh, Mom, it's all about you?
I don't know what they'll say. I just, having written my book about every family has a story, the thing that I'm recognizing is that when we can have a cohesive collective narrative about each of us in this family, rather than having competing narratives, and kind of feel fully known with all of our good, bad, smelly, stinky, fabulous, successful bits. And sometimes, having a successful parent is difficult as well. Of
course, yeah. I mean, I feel I'm very open with my children. And I speak about, my alcoholism. I speak about my mom. I speak about, they're very open with me too. But I don't feel I can be the kind of the side of me which is free. It's quite wild, quite filthy, filthy sense of humor, quite an idiot sometimes. I don't feel I can do that because I'm their mum. So I guess maybe the side I can't feel or that I don't want to show is how I am with friends, because I'm not their friend, I'm their mother.
Yeah, and that's a really important boundary that I think quite a lot of us miss, is that you are a role model as their mum, and you don't want to be the wild Susannah. So is that why you love your gay friends?
That's why I love my gay friends. Yeah. And that's why
What is it about that? What is it about that?
So I feel free. I feel free with them. I feel that, I can flirt, I can say anything, it doesn't matter what it is. And I don't feel judged at all. I just feel warmth and love. And yeah, it's that freedom where I don't feel judged.
not being judged is such a big thing, isn't it? It's such an enormous thing. And in some ways, it also sounds like you don't feel judged by strangers, like your audiences.
Yeah.
You feel known by them in some ways.
Yeah.
And with your family, you're probably not judged, but you really fear being judged.
Yeah. And I assume, because I'm judging myself within the family unit, like I said before, I've assumed they're doing the same, which they're probably not.
So it might be worth checking it out.
Oh, yes. It just might be. But what do I say? What would be the opening? Give me the question to ask, the 1-9 question to ask.
Okay. Well, let's work out the question together. So when we, as a family, when we have kind of difficult or sort of big conversations, we always do it on a walk.
Yeah, I remember you said that to me before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry,
that's never going to happen, getting them all to go on a walk together at the same time.
Okay. So do you do anything like puzzles together, or is there anything that slightly distracts you where you're not eyeballing each other, cooking in the kitchen or?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite rare now, because they've basically all left home. Well, I guess Christmas will be a time. And yeah, we do puzzles, and we do play, parlor games and cards, and sit around the table. And
so, I mean, maybe it's sit around the table time. I mean, probably not actually at Christmas. The kind of thing I'm thinking about is just being really honest, which is something like, through writing my book, through having the conversations following your book, I've begun to kind of recognize that I'm frightened of fully showing all of myself to you because I'm frightened you're going to judge me. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah, sounds totally right.
So it's
not the truth. It's the truth.
And it starts with I. It's not saying, do you judge me? It's owning I am frightened that you're judging me.
Yeah.
Like I judge my mother, like she probably judged her mother.
Well, that's exactly it. That's another ka-ching. Yeah, I judge my parents. I love my parents. And despite everything, I was proud of them in many ways. But that's very interesting.
And I think all of us judge our parents, and our children definitely judge us. But I think we can hold so many competing feelings with love at the same time. Like, where we love most, we hate most. And we have our greatest fear. And we make our deepest mistakes. And, they preoccupy us most. Loving our children is the hardest thing, because loving them so much is also unbearable, because we can't control their happiness. We can't bear it when they suffer, but also we really want them to respect and love us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very painful when that doesn't happen. But I think, I do believe that my relationship as it stands with them now is, it wouldn't seem out of the blue for me to ask that question, at all. It would resonate, and they'd think, yeah, okay, let's talk about it. Because I'm open and they're open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But and you modeling that openness is how they will be learned to be different, how to be open with themselves, how they will be open with their kids, because they're
so self-aware. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's just and I love the fact, again, in the book I write about being ready for absolutely nothing, but that included having no opinion, because one's opinion wasn't, not that it wasn't valued, but no one was interested. No one is interested in my mother opinion or on anything. My opinion didn't count. But what I love about this generation is that they all have opinions, and they have very strong opinions. They do not follow each other like little sheep. They will sit around the table and they will argue against each other, and they will fight for what they believe in verbally. And to me, that's just so impressive, because it's not where you know, how I was brought up.
And it's confidence, isn't it? That they
Yeah,
have
yeah,
that they validate their opinions that within themselves, which allows them to have the confidence to fight for them around the
absolutely.
kitchen table.
Yeah, or with their friends. You know, they're not scared to think differently, dress differently, choose different jobs to everyone else. You know, they're very independent, and for that, I am, you know, so proud that Steve and I brought up children who are like that.
And they got that from you too. So for all
Yeah,
of the other stuff, they
yeah.
got that from you. I mean, you can't just take the bad stuff from your children and say
No.
that's down to you. You have to take the good
Oh,
stuff
yeah, I
too.
do. I know, you know what? The one thing I do know that I'm pretty good at is being a mum.
That's
I do
so
know
good.
that. Yeah. In fact, it's quite funny.
Is it, what's that like saying that? One thing I know I'm good at is being a mum.
Relief. It's relief. And it was quite funny. One of the most extraordinary and exciting things I ever heard, and this is going to sound so ridiculous, Trini told me about this psychic woman who is meant to be incredible, incredible, incredible. And I did a call with her, and she was extraordinary. I didn't say who I was. I didn't say my name. She had no idea about my background. She named my 3 children, Joe, Esme, and Cece. Okay,
Wow.
actually named them. She described their characters down to a T. She got that Steen was half Danish and half Australian. I mean, it was freaky. But her opening sentence to me was, "My American, you're a phenomenal mother, aren't you?" And that was like the most fantastic thing I've ever heard. To me, that meant more than anything, than
That's
being
an Oscar,
a good.
BAFTA,
It
everything.
is, yeah, yeah. So that was great.
That's so lovely. You're good at
Yeah,
loving, Suze. Really good
yeah.
at
No, I
loving.
love to love. Yeah, I love
And
to
that's
love.
probably what's say. I mean, so I keep answering your questions, which is really annoying and very
No,
bad
it's
as a
not. I
therapist.
find it okay.
So, kind of reflecting on the book, on your book, and what you discovered in yourself through your book, and maybe from this conversation, which is a snippet of it. What is the learning that if people listening, they want to kind of take something that you've learned that they can begin to use for themselves? What would that be?
I think we are our own worst critics. We are we are our own worst enemies. And don't assume that what you feel about yourself is what other people think. They have no idea. It's kind of that thing of, it's also that thing of what other people think of you is none of your business.
Yeah, I like
And it isn't, because that's their thoughts. It's not, you know, what you feel and think yourself. So I think that's something. And I think I think curiosity can get you through so much in life. It's a way to, you know, whether you've had an illness or someone you know has had an illness, one is, you know, mental illness, whatever it is. If you're curious and you look around you and you find out more, you find out the emotional effects. Maybe it's around whatever is afflicting someone you love, or whether it's, you know, a problem at work. I think remaining curious can take you away from things that might be are painful, but in a very positive way, because you're learning at the same time and you're growing. So curiosity is, for me, is the most important thing. And this book, I was curious, you know, that's why I wrote. But once I started on this little journey, I was really curious to find out and remember what my life had been, because I'd never looked back ever.
And in a way, that curiosity, when you could turn it not onto projects like incredibly successful Trini and Susannah, or even raising a family or getting a husband, or all of the things you talk about in the book of David Lindley and all of that, when you could turn that gaze of your own curiosity on yourself, you could begin to have a different relationship with yourself.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so I hope that comes through in the book. It might not be obvious.
Really does.
So I think it will, hopefully it will encourage other people to do the same, and it will be relatable. Yes, I had a very privileged upbringing, but I've been through all the same shit as, a lot of people, but I was, so blessed in many ways, privileged. But it's been interesting how people from all walks of life have contacted me, or who I've met, who just said, I just get it. I feel less alone after reading your book, but I've also, laughed out loud. And
it is funny, really funny.
And that, it's kind of like giving a lightness to difficult subjects to tackle.
And actually, that's one of the things that I wanted to do with this podcast, is have difficult conversations that don't have to be heavy and unbearable to hear, so that we begin to have them, because otherwise we're too scared to have them because they look too big. But actually, you can have a lot of light and dark in a conversation, and the light enables you to have the dark. So do you have a question for me? It's my last.
I want to know, and this might be very difficult, but it can be a broad, generic answer, but how having an alcoholic mother will affect your children. So basically a mother who lied about her drinking, who was out of control, not, terribly. But I wonder how that affects a child to have an alcoholic parent who's come through the other side.
You have age 60.
Yeah, age 60.
Took a bit of time.
Took a bit of time. But I'm there.
But you got there.
There's hope for everyone.
Yeah,
if I can do it.
So, I mean, obviously there's a huge answer. And I think you, in this conversation, have given us that lived experience of having an alcoholic mother, which is this feeling of a kind of reaching for connection, for love, for vibrancy, and being pushed back with a kind of shrill note of a smart dress or bouffant hair, and so this constant kind of, I mean, this is too simplistic because it's so many other hues, but a constant mini rejections, and every one of those fragment your sense of self. Because as a child, as a 4-year-old, you go to reach to your mum to kind of have a hug, or be a bit scared, or dare to do something with, or show her your puzzle or your drawing. And if every one of those encounters, there's a kind of fake, oh, well done, darling, but it doesn't sink in you. It falls off you. Like the vodka fell down her throat, it just doesn't build that secure sense of yourself that has secure attachment to others. And that's what we need, is that sense of safety and predictability. And the other terrible thing about alcoholism is the unpredictability. I don't know which version, and you talked about that in the book. I didn't know which version of her I was going to get. And your dad was codependent, so he wasn't actively drinking, but he did all the behaviors. He was a dry drunk in many ways.
That's very interesting. And it's kind of thinking that, I mean, I do remember with my mum consciously thinking, I'm never going to be like her. which, such sort of classic trope. But then I don't, even when I was drinking, I never thought, oh, I've become my mother. Never once. I didn't put the two together at all. It was,
That's the terrifying thing.
Yeah. I was
about
a
addiction.
special and different drinker, but I didn't even, my mother didn't even cross my mind.
And that is that capacity for denial as an addict, whatever it is, whether it's gambling, sex, drugs, being famous, working, the story you tell yourself is the person you become. And the story you tell yourself is, I'm special, I'm fine, I'm doing okay. And it's a carapace that means that you're crumbling and lonely and chilly inside.
But what you said too, there's one word you used, which is vital, and feeling vital. And that's what I felt when I was drinking. It, misconception,
Vitalized you.
But it vitalized me. And that's something I've never thought about before. That's, you kind of look at it to hide feelings. I never really thought that about myself, but definitely that word vitalize. I think it was to vitalize myself, to not be so dead.
And I'm having lights go zing in me, and we're coming to the end. But kind of psychologically and psychoanalytically, the dead mother breastfeeding, and you can talk about this in every kind of parental interaction from breastfeeding. If you have a dead mother, there's a deadness in the child that is constantly looking for life, for vitality, for being alive. And you will overperform in order to get that sense of vitality. But when you don't have the knowledge of the deadness that it is trying to revitalize, it just goes to a little pocket in you rather than all of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, complete sense. And I just feel even more devastated. You've done a really shit job, because I feel even more self-loathing after that. But that is true, and it's very important to face these things. And because it's funny, it's my
God, I was thinking
daughter.
about you, your mother.
Oh,
to
with
you,
my mum. No, but I'm thinking about my children. Yeah. That's the bald truth. There we go. And it's, Cece, my youngest daughter, she was the one who was, bore witness to it more than any of the others. And I'm going to have this conversation with her, because it's so important to acknowledge it, but with specific questions, and really listen, which I do try and do now.
And and I say this with full, open-hearted, massive confidence, is it's never too late to have a happy childhood, and it's never too late to repair the injuries from the past. You can't go back and undo them, but by being honest, by acknowledging your contribution, by not defending against it, you can have amazing healing for everybody in the family.
Yeah, and I've seen this. It's beginning. It's taking a long time, but the trust is there again, and it's wonderful to see them grow with that, the fertilizer of love. That genuine love.
Genuine love, true, authentic, squishy, squashy love. That is a wonderful place to stop. Thank you, Susannah Constantine.
Thank you, Julia Samuel. You are amazing. And I love you.
So are you.
And I'll see you in Bath.
Yes.
Come down to Bath, yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, darling.
So I'm just going to pause here. Hold on. Stop that recording.
Yeah, and
I'm going to stop this.